to another episode of the EMS Wizard Podcast. I am the gentleman G. Mark Casey, and I have Walter, I have Terry with us on this episode. We are looking through the lens of the Wizards to bring you insight and education on EMS leadership and management. Man, that felt good. I got all the way through it.
Where's John?
Wait, where's...
It's the only reason I got all the way through it.
Dagnabbit. Huh.
Nobody
John.
got to interrupt me.
John Wilson.
Man.
John is not with us. He's
Who was not
suffered
with us?
suffered a deep loss, and he's taking an episode or two off to grieve. And y'all should keep him in your thoughts.
Because of Green Bay, he's all offended.
Yeah, I'm not. But...
Bless it. Not careless.
So,
Bless.
Mm-hmm. Walter and Mark, John's not with us. John's not with us this episode, but something I've been getting a lot of questions on from folks is promotional processes, interviews, questions, asking for advice. And some folks have listened to our earlier episodes. Some folks have not, and so I've referenced them. I actually did a presentation last year in Greensboro talking about some interview stuff, and so I've done that as a mini one-on-one or small group session for some folks. But that really, to me, continues to be a hot topic in EMS, in our agencies, for our friends that are out there listening. And so we just open it up to y'all two. What advice, and maybe it's something we hit on, maybe something a little bit different, but what advice, and we'll start with Mark, since he's being uninterrupted tonight. Mark, what thoughts?
So, yeah, I think we get asked this question so many times from so many different places across the state, because there's so many different ways that agencies, hold their hiring processes, promotional processes, and all the EMS agencies are so different from county to county, from the east to the west. So there's so many different thought processes that we need to take into consideration. So whenever we're looking at that one specific agency, we're looking to either whether we're promoting from within or whether we're promoting from the outside, we need to learn as much as we can about that agency. We need to learn as much as we can about their process even. I mean, where does it say in the rule book that you can't reach out and, maybe learn more about what this process is actually going to look like? Because sometimes maybe, as an agency, maybe we haven't done a very good job of explaining what our process is, or being very, very, very clear and transparent about what the individual can expect in that process.
So what I'm hearing is step number one is we've got to do our homework. And sometimes, and some people get a little bit weirded out when I first toss this phrase out there, but when I explain myself, they say, "Oh yeah, it really is it's kind of like dating somebody. Is you've got to make sure that this works for you and that this works for them." And in today's modern electronic era, 20 years ago, so Mark, this is probably when you would have been in elementary school, but Walter and I, we would look in a yearbook, maybe we would talk to a friend, hey, do you know this person? But today, with the internet being the way that it is, we're able to look at social media. What is an agency posting about? What is the media talking about them? Maybe even able to look up some folks that work for that agency and what are they talking about? Walter,
I think that's called like pre-planning, and I call it pre-interview pre-planning.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out A, what position is it? B, do you even qualify for the position that you're going to try to apply for? And then C, what other information do you need to know about this process to be able to even get ready for the process? So when you're going to do that process, then you need to go back and do some more homework, because you want to make sure that you're on your A game to be able to get the information that you have. But I'm going to say pre-planning starts way before a job comes open. And yes. I say this all the time. Pre-planning starts before a job comes open, because it's very hard to be in the spotlight, in the limelight for the interview process when you are not the best employee and or a whatever kind of employee you want to be, go against the grain all the time to apply for those positions. Yes, we have to have people who go against the grain. I'm very well understanding of that. However, don't be the couch potato and not do anything and then get ready for the interview process and then you're number one. Doesn't work.
That's one thing I can remember my training officer telling me years ago, and I can hear him repeating it constantly in my mind. You should always be working to make yourself as marketable as possible, right? You should be doing everything you can to getting that education, getting those, that street cred in, doing all those things to make yourself to build yourself to the point to where it's no question you're the one that's got the job. You've got all the things that's needed. You've done your homework. You've put in the work on the front end. You should be able to enter that room with at least a level of confidence for that interview or promotional process or what have you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Reverend Meads and Reverend Casey with us tonight, preaching the good word.
Well, we're more leadership focused, but I even tell EMT basics, AEMTs, and paramedic students that are coming through. My primary role now is education more than anything. So I tell these students, when you're going to go do ride time with an agency, that is your job interview. EMS is not but so big, and they are going to remember everything that Terry Sheehy did when he came into the EMS agency for ride time. And if you sit like a bump on a log, you sit on the couch and don't do anything. If they're getting up to clean an ambulance, if they're getting up to mop the floor, if they're getting up to wash dishes, and you sit on the couch and do nothing, that's what they're going to remember you as. Same instance when you're trying to apply for a leadership position. If you sit on the couch and let everybody do everything else, and then you want the leadership position, it's probably not going to go in your favor. And you can't blame the agency. You can't blame the people doing the interview process. You got to go back to one person. Don't everybody shoot the messenger, but you got to go back to one person. It's you. And sometimes you have to look at the mirror, and that's a very hard thing. Yes, I'm preaching, Terry. Sorry. You got to look into the mirror sometimes and say, it's not always everybody else's fault. Sometimes I've got to figure out myself. On to the next topic now. I'll get off that one.
Walter Meads is saying, no, I want to interrupt you because I want to hit on this for a second before we move to the next, because this is like every head bowed, every eye closed, because I want to hear from Mark about this for a second, because we do see that. And what you are saying when somebody comes through in a process, if they're fortunate or unfortunate enough that somebody who had FTO'd them, precepted them, whatever, mentored, whatever word your agency, your college uses, and that individual who didn't want to do check trucks, or that individual who didn't engage in training. Hey, we're training on this equipment today, and they don't want to engage with them. And so I was going to ask, how early do you think that starts? But really, it's starting on day one. Mark, what are some of your thoughts with that before Walter takes us in a different direction?
Yeah, so and that's the thing. I was literally having this conversation during our one of our recent orientation processes. Is hey, you might not have thought about this yet, but when should your leadership training begin? Oh, well, has it started yet? Well, guess what? We're going to start it today here as a brand new EMT with our agency. So just talking back to the days, even as a student, you're being evaluated as a student, as a potential employee for that agency, right? That's your first starting point. That's your first foundational street cred that you're establishing to start working toward that leadership, that recognition within the agency of they've got their stuff pretty well squared away. They come to work, they do their job, and they've got the right mindset for that further growth. Versus the flip side of that coin, man, they're not really engaged. They're not really involved. We don't see where, this individual isn't going to grow. They're probably going to struggle, or they're not, probably even going to stay within the profession. Right. So that's where that process needs to start. Where we're establishing ourselves, even as a student, brand new EMT, brand new paramedic. We should be working then on refining those leadership skills and abilities, right? Because you don't have to, you don't wait until you're promoted into some level of responsibility before you start learning about what leadership is, right? What do you think, Walter?
No, I agree. EMT, starting at EMT, day one, starting at EMT is when that starts. It doesn't, you don't wait until that position comes open to be able to do something. You start at that day one that you do that. Terry, you were going to say something. I interrupted.
Yeah, no. I mean, because I think it's really good discussion and good thoughts that, so if it's not, if I'm a paramedic in the agency and I'm looking for, and like I jokingly say, the titles are made up. It's district chief, right, or it's lieutenant or captain or supervisor, whatever they call it. Day one, what is that? What are some things that you would say to that paramedic maybe out there? Or maybe it's a non-medic system, maybe it's a rescue squad or whatever. What would you say to that person who's trying to, they want to be a supervisor, they're going up for that promotion. We've already hit on, don't wait for that advertisement to start doing stuff. Day one, when you get that credential or you start your current job, you should start looking for the next. But what are some actions or things? What would you recommend? And we'll start with you, Walter.
So, some of the things that I recommend is read a book. So there's all kinds of leadership books out there. There's all kinds of things out there. Read a book, figure out some stuff. Get on, people like GEMS and EMS World and all those things. Those are some good things to be able to learn some leadership and some interview processes. So get on one of those articles and read one of those, link up with some people who have done that before. The next thing is practice what you want to do while you're at work doing it. Now, what I will say to that is don't be arrogant and don't act like you're the supervisor and you're not, but take apart and take interest on the things that are going on in the agency or that the agency is doing and learn everything that you can. So this is one of the things that some of y'all may have heard me say before as well, is be a sponge. You got to be a sponge. You got to soak up all the knowledge. You got to get everything that you can. You got to listen to everything that you can. You got to be able to put it up here in this brain. But then at some point in time, you got to be able to wring the sponge out, like you're washing dishes, wringing that sponge out to get all the knowledge, the soap and the water out of the sponge, and you're going to give that to other people. So, you may be a new paramedic that has some leadership capabilities or leadership knowledge, and you have a new paramedic that comes in to work with you that's even newer than you are. So, I used to say that, we had 5-year plus credentialed people training the brand new people. Those days are gone. You're lucky if you have a year or 2-year person that's training a brand new person coming in. So, but what you have in that 1 year, the person that's coming in does not. Squeeze your sponge out to be able to give them some information, to be able to help them out as well, to be a mentor to them. I was just talking to somebody the other day about, I wish everyone could get them a mentor. And this was in a education role as being a mentor, but I wish everybody could get a mentor. And I think we lack on that mentorship sometimes. And what I'll say that we do that is because we don't want somebody to be smarter than we are. So if somebody else is smarter than I am, they're going to potentially get ahead of me, and I want this position. So I don't want to share that knowledge. We've got to be able to figure out how to share knowledge, and you still have to be able to do your part to be able to be the best for that position. Mark?
Yeah, before we go to Mark, let me just interrupt for a second. And I almost wish in post-production
I feel like John Wilson is still here. You're interrupting. I feel like
John is attending through Terry right now.
Correct.
Yes. I almost hope in post-production that we're able to do some organ music in with some of this, because I feel like this is the altar call, asking if you're looking for a mentor, come down front, raise your hand,
Correct.
and we're going to put some information into your hands
We're
so
going
that
to
we
find a
can,
mentor for you.
yeah,
Correct.
so that we can baptize you into mentorship. And I don't, man, I so don't disagree with any of that. And we've talked offline, we've talked any number of times personally, professionally, about that, or even in our group settings when all of us are together. But let me redirect on one thing, and this is a question I sometimes get. I have my answer, but I'm interested, Walter, to hear yours, and then Mark's, answer to this and his take on things. People will sometimes say, when I read these leadership books, I have difficulty. I seem to recommend, because it resonates with me, military leadership or paramilitary, and I can draw some parallels, engineering department or logistics or whatever. And so I tend to read those, but folks will sometimes say, I struggle for this to resonate with me, or I struggle, how do I apply this in EMS? Because there's no great EMS leadership book, or if there is, I just haven't read it yet. And if you've written one, and well, anyways,
Please let us know
so
if you
Walter,
have, so we can read them.
Yes, exactly. Send me a free copy.
So, leadership it is not fire, it's not EMS, it's not public safety, it's not, probably one of the bigger things, probably fire has done some officer leadership stuff, police department has done some, EMS really hasn't. But if you look at the principles is basic leadership. So it's not keyed towards any specific discipline. It is general principle leadership. No different than EMS Officer 1 is. And if you've heard me in EMS Officer 1 before, you said I could take this leadership to Walmart. If you took it with me, I said you could take this leadership to Walmart. For instance, the one I'm going to use is customer service. So customer service is geared towards, we typically think of customer service being in the service industry. Well, we're providing a service. It's just an EMS service instead of providing a good service. So we have to take the parts of that to be able to function in EMS. And, I think if you can look at some of those principles and then take some of the principles that affect you in EMS and be able to use them, then you have done well. If you say, well, I just don't understand any of this principles, then, you maybe need to reread it again, or maybe you need to go look at some other source, because there's so many things in leadership that is not, I can't point a finger on it. So I can't point a finger. It's everywhere. And you just have to use it for your good, for your agency, for yourself as a leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. Gentlemen, what was some of your take with that?
Yeah, just going back to that new paramedic, the thing that I always try to share whenever we're releasing a new medic or a new advanced EMT to function in the agency is this momentum that you've maintained to get through AEMT school, this momentum that you've maintained to get through paramedic school, the momentum like that train you have there, Terry, you've got that momentum, need to maintain
choo
it.
Choo.
And that's the thing, you've got to maintain that momentum, because if we're sitting there fighting to get through paramedic school, we get there, we get to the agency, we've accomplished everything we need to accomplish to function as a paramedic within the agency, and now we're here, we're going to function, I can play paramedic. We think we're done, and usually after a few mistakes, or kind of talking with other people, or maybe that promotion process opened and you weren't selected for it, oh wait a minute, I lost that momentum that I had. So that's my advice to any new paramedic: maintain that momentum, how hard you were working and how motivated you were to accomplish all those things as a new paramedic. Then if you maintain that, you will maintain that success in your career in EMS. I think that's a common fail point that I fell into myself, and that I see a lot of other people fall into a lot as well. But talking back about the customer service, man, that's just we can have a whole episode, I think, on customer service, and just we can talk about what Simon says, what Lee says, what Jocko says. That's a whole series.
We could talk about what Kathia said in the last episode, because I was out at this Italian place the other day, and I was like, we haven't had a 90-second visit. What's happening here? And I'm stealing stuff from her with that. Sorry, I did mean to interrupt, but I did.
But I tell paramedic students this, and Terry heard me at the last paramedic graduation we had for the college, and I said, you know what? You are the change. You can make the change here. We can't go back and change people from 10 years, 15, 5 years ago now. You have to make the positive change. And if you can, and like that locomotive, you're going forward, you've got that, keep moving forward, because you can be the one with that change and keep that change moving forward. So
make the change.
So we got pre-interview a lot with pre-interview. So as Terry's going to bust his tail, it looks like. So the next thing I would say is the interview. So with the interview, be prepared for the interview. That's part of your pre. But now you're coming to the interview. One thing I want to say is look the part.
So what does that mean? Look the part.
There's some people that say differently, but this is what I'm going to say. You should always go to an interview no less than business casual. I have seen some people. What is
some
business
people don't
casual?
know what that is.
I'll tell you just a minute. So some people say 3-piece suit. Some people say business casual. So for a male, business casual is. I do not. I actually do not own a suit. I do not own a suit. That's why you never see me in one, because I do not own one. So business
Walter
casual
doesn't interview. Jobs are given to him.
No, I've interviewed, and every time I interviewed, been business casual. So business casual for men, at least some type of, I will call them slack pants. So some type of khaki pants or black pants or navy pants, or, whatever kind of pants that you want, not jeans. So some type of business style pants. At least a polo shirt. So a nice looking polo shirt, not your EMS polo shirt, but a polo shirt. Belt, and socks and shoes, and try to be matching with that. I've had so many people that have come in, and Terry, you probably have seen this at the beach, come in for an interview and they're wearing flip-flops. And people go, well, do you really want to not hire this person because they have flip-flops on? And I'm like, you know what? On this grading scale system, somebody else may have got a few more points because they came in dressed looking appropriately. Business casual for females. Some type of dress pants as well. It doesn't have to be a suit dress pants. Some type of dress pants, shoes, a nice top of some sorts. Hair did, guys, your hair did as well. Your teeth brushed, you shaved, those types of things. Come in. And, more for leadership positions definitely come in with those business casual. If you want to come in, and I'll use Terry as an example, with that pinstripe 3-piece suit with a pink shirt on underneath of it with the tie that matches it, and that's what you come in as, that's just you looking sharper. And I guess sharp is the thing that I'm looking for here. Don't come in looking sloppy. I've seen people come in with flip-flops, with jeans, baggy jeans, with T-shirts, and they're applying for a supervisor position. So,
So
go ahead.
So there's a buddy I lifeguarded with, and during the summertime, he had what he called his dress flip-flops. He had leather flip-flops that he would wear to weddings and that he would wear to dinner. This dude just wore flip-flops almost year-round, but
well, I think it comes back to what we talk about all the time. Well, it depends. So is this a entry-level position into the agency? So, the nicest thing they might have is their nice, clean T-shirt and their nicest pair of blue jeans. I used to have that hard, fast rule of If you didn't come in as a dude and you're not wearing a tie, man, I don't know why I'm gonna waste my time. I used to have an opinion, and then in retrospect, I'm like, it's not really that big of a deal. That might be the nicest thing that they have to wear.
It might be.
That might be the only thing they have to wear. And it's like I've heard John say before. I mean, we're gonna give a uniform anyway. So so that entry level interview versus if it's a promotional thing, especially if you're hiring people from within, I think you need to give yourself every opportunity to outdo somebody else that's on that panel.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
So
right.
if my one up is I've got this really nice 3-piece suit, man, I'm going to sport that. I'm going to be so clean. I'm going to be so fresh. I'm going to smell so good. I just, every little thing, every little box that I can check, I want to check that box because that might be the one thing that puts me up above somebody else that's interviewed that day. Terry.
And it's funny you say that, because in talking with a deputy director out here in the eastern part of the state, they had talked about how their spouse had interviewed for a job doing pest control and was going out the door in jeans and a t-shirt and didn't get the job. And they said, why did you wear that? And their spouse said, well, it's just a pest control job. And so the next pest control job, different company that they went to, that individual wore what they wear normally to church, and lo and behold, they get the job. And so it like we talk about, I'm going to give you a uniform, but how serious? I probably use that. How serious are you taking it? And I do have my sliding scale of dress flip flops versus, do you look like you were just working down at the fish house and you smell like it too?
That's right.
Right.
That's
and then are they on shift that day and they just chose to stay in uniform for their interview, or are they on shift that day and they took the time to change out into something,
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's just one little piece of the puzzle. Whenever I talk about clinical care, I talk about forming the different pieces of the puzzles to get a picture of the clinical picture of your patient, so you'll know what you're looking at to take care of. So that's just one piece of the puzzle in the interview process, is that how they're dressed, how do they carry themselves? How do they communicate with other individuals? Do they look you directly in the eye whenever they're talking to you? Just a lot of these, even the nonverbal cues, like one technique I've seen used before is, they'll lay a piece of paper in the floor between the doorway and where the chair is that they sit down to do the interview. Do they pick the piece of paper up off the floor to be helpful, or do they see it and ignore it, or they just don't see it at all? So it just kind of tells you a little bit, not that it's necessarily a disqualification kind of thing, but it tells you that much more about one of those characteristics you might be looking for that position.
Well, and that goes with, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Walter.
That goes with answering questions. When you got a question, answer the question. Answer the question to the best you can. Don't give me a bunch of fluff and answer the question, because I'm like, they just fluffed themselves to that question. And Terry, you've heard me say that before. They just fluffed themselves to that question because they just gave me a bunch of bullcrap that wasn't an answer. They gave me a 15-minute answer to the question, but it still didn't answer the question that I asked. So ask the question, answer the question, or the question's asked, answer the question, and then move on. Some people are like, well, I was only in that interview for 30 minutes. Did I do bad? Not if you answered all the questions. If you answered all the questions, you did great, and you answered all the questions. Move on. And then, some people end up trying to answer incorrect questions, or not incorrect questions. They try to, I don't know what it is, what I want to use, but they try to fluff around or something. So
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
They answer the question they want to answer, not the question that you asked.
There you go.
They answer a question, just not your question.
That's where I want to put that.
So I can't believe that we're already, and we jumped in on this pretty early. To me, this says we probably need to come back to this, I don't know, in a couple weeks, couple months, couple episodes, and talk some more about it. I think we're ending on, and I've got one final quick question for both of y'all. I think we're ending on answer the question. And to me, part of one of the phrases I would say is that should be a conversation. It shouldn't be 3 words, but it shouldn't be 10 minutes. In a job interview one time, somebody had said what they do for their applicants is they say, when they sit down, we've got 12 questions to ask you. You've got 60 minutes. use your time however you want to. And some people say that's a little bit high pressure. To me, hey, just tell me what I'm playing with up front. So
yeah, if I know that on the front end, that's the game I got to play, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So,
Just like
so
taking
the final,
a test. Just like taking a test. You know,
Yeah.
you got 50 minutes, you got 50 questions, you got 50 minutes. How you answer the questions like you want to. Same thing with interview questions.
Well, and it's funny because that's that lens that we talk about with things. And Walter, that's a very college thing, and where Mark and I dabble, you
That's
know,
right.
in that world. I think we both kind of say, huh, you know what? Yeah. But a true agency person might say, what is this that you're talking about? So
Correct.
final question that I have is as brief or long as you want it to be. We'll start with the gentleman. What's something that was valuable to you in preparing you for the job that you're in, that leadership role, whether it was a class, an experience, a conversation, mentorship? What's one thing for you, Mark, that really kind of, and I know you want to say EMS officer because it was kind of like you were working behind the scenes with your heroes and we made a lot of good things happen in your life. But what's something else other than the officer program and being John's 64th best friend?
Well, I'm like, I think 364th best friend now, maybe. I don't know. After Green Bay comment, that might not be true anymore. But I think, the officer program, I actually, after I was promoted to training officers, whenever I started learning more about the officer program and started taking some of those classes, and I was like, man, legit, I wish I had this, years ago. I could have, probably been so much further along in my career if I'd had some of that training earlier on. But I think one of the things that probably set me apart from most was, I got into the education side. I had been a paramedic for, not even 2 years, and I started teaching the nighttime EMT class at the college. And I hadn't had, other than, training at the local volunteer fire department, every Monday night. I didn't have a whole lot of experience teaching and training, people, especially perfectly good strangers. So, those years of teaching and, learning about how to communicate with students and how to share information and convey information in different ways and different teaching styles, different learning styles, and learning, just different communication methods from all in between that. I think that's what helped me, so that whenever they did come with those specific questions that are very difficult to answer sometimes, because we don't like to talk about the things that we don't like to talk about our weaknesses. But that's a common question that comes up on an interview panel, and I need to be prepared to not just give the canned one sentence answer that I prepared the night before. I need to have identified those weaknesses already, and then be able to naturally convey that answer in that interview. Right. So I think just that experience in education on the front end and being able to communicate and answer those questions like that on the interview panel probably helped me out a lot.
Walter, what are your thoughts?
So I think that nervousness before every interview is a good thing. So every interview that I have ever done, I've always been nervous. And I think that just shows that you care enough that you want to do the right thing and answer the right questions and do the right thing. So I think that first is normal. The second thing that has probably helped me with some of the interviews that I have gone through is having a friend and or mentor that I could call to get some information from and help guide me through the process and talk me through the process. Whether they had ever been through the process before or not, they were still able to give me some pointers and able to run me through some questionings to be able to get myself together before I went before that interview. So, I think before, those are the things that have helped me. When I became an administrator, there was no such thing as EMS officer. There was really no such thing as EMS education. As I told y'all before, it was like, here's the keys, go out and do good things today. Humma da humma, you're it. So, I think we have worked to try to bridge that gap to be able to have that. But I think what's helped me is the friends and people that I could talk to prior.
Yeah, I think what you just said right then just kind of resonated a lot with me just then, because it's not, just getting through that interview is very much, not just yourself, it's what, the abilities of everyone else around you is kind of set you up for. Just like being a
Correct.
leader of an organization, being a leader isn't just one person. It takes a group, it takes a team to be an effective leader of an organization, right? So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
So what I'm hearing is a best friend. A best friend is what makes the difference.
John's
for you.
not here. We don't have to talk about best friends. John's not here.
Picking the best friend.
I wanna talk about. I think for me, just to kind of to wrap that and give my take on it. Prior experience, two things. Number one, kind of in a vein that y'all are talking about, being an instructor, teaching, because when you have that problem student, that's similar to a problem employee. When you have a student who doesn't get it, that's a lot like an employee who doesn't understand something, and you've got to teach them. I talk about how in the fire world, and I came to EMS from the fire world. If you're going to be a fire officer in the state of North Carolina, you have to have your instructor. You have to have it for, I think, 2 years before you can do that. And it's because of that role that the company officer plays. I think the second thing, when I talk about something that prepared me for that role, was my job with the town as an ocean rescue supervisor. People will sometimes say, hey, what the heck? And one of the statements that I make is, what is the applicability and scale of whatever it is that you are doing today? How do you, frankly, market yourself, sell yourself, like what Walter and the gentleman have been talking about? That I remember in my interview for captain as an operations supervisor, referencing back things that I did for the town as an ocean rescue supervisor. And during the weekend, I was the senior person. I ran the agency when the director was off. I assisted with training. I did a number of things. And so things like, okay, I coordinate, the agency's emergency response with whether it was the fire department, the police department, the federal partners, whoever it was, or if somebody called in sick that day, I had to take care of the scheduling. If a piece of equipment broke, I had to get it fixed. And so that was one of the things that in my interview, to where I was able to say that I already do this job. I just do this job, and it looks a little bit different. I wear flip-flops to work instead of boots to work, and drive a pickup truck on the beach instead of an ambulance going down the road. So,
but Terry,
so I think
Terry, do you think any of outside volunteer things that you had done helped that as well? Because I will go back and say, some of the volunteer things that I had done, and not just like a volunteer EMS agency, which is other, and I'll use the Ruitons or the Shriners or a board of some sorts. They all help prepare you as well. You don't realize they help prepare you, but they help prepare you as well. I know volunteer, we don't have a lot of people who volunteer still anymore. But, in essence, if you're on one of those volunteer boards, or, even it's the YMCA board, that does give you some leadership preparation as well, because you're having to do something for that board.
I think it's exactly the same as Master of the Lodge.
Correct.
This year. I find a lot of the stuff that I do is not too dissimilar from what I'm doing for work. It's just for a different purpose. But
Correct.
Hey, we want to do this for the lodge building. It's no different than, hey,
Correct.
we need to, or we want to do this for the station, or we want to do this for this, for the orphanage. Well, that's no different
Correct.
than in any one of the children's groups or whatever in our area, where we say, hey, let's help them out with stuff. And so I think whether it's the Ruritons, whether it's whatever it is that you're doing in your community, you're volunteering at the food pantry, I think some of those things are very applicable and bring back.
Correct.
So I think that ends our time. Yeah. I have something beautiful written here that I just wanted to deliver in memory of William Shatner, who is still with us, unlike John C. Wilson. So today's tales of courage and expertise remind us of the incredible impact of EMS leaders. Their decisions, often made in the blink of an eye, can mean the difference between life and death. As we close this chapter, remember the next call could be yours. Stay prepared, stay focused, and above all, stay safe. This is the EMS Wizard signing off.